Good evening and welcome to the workshop. I wanted to share with you a little bit of what I've been doing on my lathe recently, and this is the setup I've been using, and it's a little unusual. It's not what you've seen before with the big chuck and the top slide here. What I've been doing is doing some milling and drilling. So I've been using the Myford collets. That's these here. This is in quite tightly, so I'm not going to be able to get it undone with one hand. But this is a 1/2 inch collet. This is the collet ring, and this ring threads directly onto the spindle for a really good grip. The collets only slit on the outside, so they haven't got as much travel as the ER style collets, which can actually spring open and close a lot more, but they're really good for concentricity. So I've been using this to hold a bit, and I've been milling in this. And what you can see here is a fixed vertical slide, and it's fixed because the only axis it moves is up and down here. You can move it backwards and forwards using the cross slide dial, but it doesn't tilt and it doesn't swivel. And this is actually really good. I was really unsure and actually spent a good deal of money to buy this kind of original dual swivel. So it swivels this way, so you can rotate with relation to the T-knot. With relation to these slots, you can rotate the vise this way, but also you can undo this and you can rotate it that way. And then you can also do this, so you can cut angles and bevels and things. You can mill them and drill them, sorry. But I found this incredibly difficult to use. Maybe I'm just bad, but I found that the lack of rigidity in here, certainly, and my lack of experience made it very, very difficult to use this effectively. So what I thought I could do is just kind of wing it. I'll figure it out as I go along. And actually, that was a terrible mistake. So I just made a lot of mistakes and create a lot of frustration. It was recommended I pick up this book here, Milling Operations in the Lathe, and I can't recommend it more highly. It's a short book, but it really does tell you what you need to do. For example, that this is a 2-flute end mill, also known as a slot drill, and this is perfect for plunging, and it's perfect for like when you're drilling, for example, but it's also really great for facing operations. This is what I was using before, which is a 4-flute end mill, and this is really good for creating shoulders and things, and cutting on this section, the outside, you know, to go around a piece of work, but not as good for facing. And as soon as I started switching to this, I switched to using the collet instead of the 3-jaw chuck, and the fixed vertical slide instead of the swivel vertical slide. I had a lot more success, and I went from finishes that looked like this. Oops. Finishes that look like this, to finishes that looked more like this. It's just not going to focus. There we go. Yeah. So much better. And then this is brass, and that other piece I showed you is steel, but it's symbolic of the kind of sea change that came with actually learning how to use this stuff and doing it properly. And that's what I've been up to. And what I've been making is this. This is the crank and crank pin and axle and flywheel and engine frame for a wobbler steam engine. So this little hole here, that's the pivot, and this is the inlet and exhaust. And this little gizmo I showed you earlier on is the cylinder. So the pivot pin will thread into there, and that's the inlet and exhaust. So down there. So this actually came from a much bigger piece of brass, which I milled down. I turned and I milled down to this shape here. So this will bolt on here, and the piston will run from inside the cylinder onto that crank pin and drive it around, and as it's moving it will pivot. I think this is a bit too short, so I might have to remake this, but that's not a problem. Yeah, and I've just had so much fun making this. This flywheel in particular was a bit of a nightmare. I made it out of this 2-inch steel bar stock, and as you can see, I managed to get the parting tool in a little way, and that's about as far as it got, and the rest of it was with a hacksaw. And I don't think you can underestimate how much of a pain in the arse it is to use a saw to saw through 2 inches of steel. But yeah, I'm really pleased that we've got a lot going on here, and to be honest, there's probably a lot more that I could do on this one. I think if I show you it running, you'll see that there's a little bit of play in there, and I think there's a bit of run out on the flywheel, but not enough to make a difference for a little steam engine. So just really pleased with how that's going.